It's difficult enough for many of us adults to watch the images of what's happening in the Middle East, and trying to protect your child in the middle of that from fears and fighting and what's happening halfway around the world can be overwhelming. Dr. Brad Schwal from the Center for Integrative Counseling and Psychology joins me this morning with some guidelines on how to talk to your children about what's going on. Good morning. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So I want to point out that we purposely are not going to show any video or images during this interview because they can be disturbing. You may have kids at home right now. If you had children at home, what would your guidelines be? What age children would you let see the images that are coming across electronically?
So children up to the ages of 10 or 11 don't need to be seeing any images. And so we know that seeing those images are hard to understand, are difficult to understand. And so we need to be careful about watching the news, what we're looking at on our devices. As kids get older, I do believe it's important to have conversation. So we certainly want to limit those violent images. At the same time, I believe with 10, 11, and then certainly on into adolescence, we need to be having conversations about what's happening in our world.
So let's say that your 8-year-old who hasn't, you've kept them protected at home, comes home from school, and they've seen on somebody else's phone something that's really disturbing and they're scared to death. What is the first step that you do?
We do validate, and we say that must have been hard to see. We also validate bad things, difficult things do happen in our world. We do, give an example of empathy. So we do say that must be very scary for those there and those who might live here who know people there. So encouraging empathy at that age is still important, even though we're not going in depth about what's happening.
So you're not just talking about empathy, you're actually practicing it and letting a child experience empathy when you say that must be really difficult for you to see, to feel. It's an experiential thing.
Absolutely.
That's really good. I like that.
So even though we're not wanting that young child to see images, if they do, we do move it to that empathy.
So how do you explain to a kid that this is halfway around the world? They don't have a concept of the earth, the globe, or whatever, and that probably, in all likelihood, we are not in danger here.
Yes, so we always emphasize your school works hard to protect you. Those events are happening in another country, in another part of our world. Again, with older children, we recognize that there are fears here in the States. Those who are Jewish or have family in Israel, those terroristic threats are a concern. And so with our older kids, again, pointing to that empathy, we do emphasize certainly that is far away, but we want to be aware of those around us and the different ways that what's happening far away does impact us here.
So I'm curious, this is such a divisive issue you hear people taking one side or the other side. How important is it for raising healthy kids for you to be able to explain to your child that empathy for all of humanity? How important is this concept?
Very, very important. And I think that the way that we can do that is to gain information from good, solid sources. So we definitely talk to our kids about what terrorism is. We can also learn and talk to our kids about the history of what's happening and what has happened in the Middle East, understanding that it's very, very complex. So the more that we can, with our kids, be informed, be informative to them, and then also, again, share that empathy. We're focusing on what we can do more than what we can't do, because what we can't do often is the most difficult. And watching and seeing what's happening in our world impacts all of us. Those who deal with anxiety or depression, it's hard to see because it raises questions about our world.
So I got a final question, and this bothers a lot of adults. What would you say to a kid about why bad things happen to good people?
Yes, so we validate the fact that we live in a difficult world, that we can't control everything about our world, and there are people who make choices. There are things that happen that are out of our control that are not good. And we then focus on what we can do. And what we can do is create safe environments, respectful environments around where we are. So we acknowledge we can't control it. It is so difficult. Bad things do happen. We don't understand it. But what can we do to create good?
Where can people find you?
TheCenterCounseling.org. Our therapists are always here to talk to folks, but particularly in times like this, we want to send messages of hope, of healing, of growth. And so if you check out our website, we do have some good tips on this and many other topics.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.